And as we've been talking about all morning, Dave Donaghy, the big dog, the CEO of the Brisbane Broncos, joins us in the studio. How are you, mate?
Very good, Cos. G'day, Heels.
Congratulations on a good win, mate, against the Titans.
That was very good. It was a really good night. Everyone saw the black jerseys and the conversations that were had on the night prior to the event and post the event as well around mental health. So, it was a really, really important step, I felt, for our game and for Australian sport to bring that conversation more to the centre. Certainly, I'm sure it would have triggered a lot of conversations, but it was a wonderful, wonderful event, wonderful evening.
It was an amazing initiative from the Broncos to go the all-black jersey. Not only did it look absolutely outstanding, did you understand, I suppose, the widespread reach that it would have just on that all-black jersey?
We weren't too sure, Cos, and I think if I step back, we do a lot of research, and without going down a different track here, I'm pleased to report to your listeners the intense work from looking at the notepads, all the notes that you two gentlemen have here. It's very thorough, and likewise from the work that you both do. We do a lot of work around talking to our members and fans about what's important to them, and what's been resonating the last few years has been mental health. And it's a conversation that they wanted to have, and in discussions internally, it became apparent it was a conversation that we wanted to have, but we weren't sure how to go about it, and that's where partnerships with the Black Dog Institute, partnerships with the Banyans are incredibly important to shaping that. But certainly, the jersey was a hero piece. It captured the attention. I've heard amazing stories last week around lineups of 200 metres at Rebel sports stores to try and get hold of them. Jerseys being broken. Old women, ladies buying, 4XL jerseys when they're clearly an extra small, just because they want to get their hands on one. And it's been incredible how much it resonated with the community. But I think it was the story and what it meant behind it, which was why it was so such a strong response.
A lot of the listeners have been asking in regards to the black jersey, will we see it again, or is it just a one-off piece? I mean, obviously, if you're a sponsor and you're paying a lot of money, you don't see any of their branding. So is it just a one-off? Is that it for this year?
Yeah, it was absolutely a one-off. Yeah. And again, we couldn't do that without the sponsor support.
Correct.
So for them to. It's a significant investment that sponsors pay and invest into football clubs and organisations. So for them to come on that journey and understand the significance and importance of that conversation was incredible for them to show that support. Again, was a big part of why it was such a huge response.
They'll tolerate that once a year, though, won't they? And the gifts from you guys back to the corporates to have them in their ranks, it'd be such a good thing for them to do in their offices.
Oh, and Heels, I can absolutely assure everyone there was no pushback. As soon as the conversation was had, it was what do you need? How do we sign up and how can we be part of that conversation? Because clearly, mental health is such a big impact in the community and society. It impacts so many people, if not everyone, either directly or indirectly. So how can we help shape that conversation? Everyone wanted to be a part of that, which is wonderful.
The Broncos obviously feature very heavily a part of this show, both on the Monday mornings, in the lead up to games, sagas that happen and unfold, and you're at the forefront. You're at the coalface of the Broncos and what that club stands for and where it's going, mainly from a business point of view, Madge being the coaching side of it. Just give us an insight, mate, to how you have had to deal with some of these young sensations. I mean, I can't recall a game where we see the likes of Reece Walsh, Ezra Mam situation, etc., where it just generates such talk and topic over long periods of time. It's front and back page of papers. How do you deal with that sort of stuff internally?
It's an interesting one, Cos, and I think if I probably can best draw a parallel to a US coach in Steve Kerr, famous basketball coach, and Steve's got this great saying where he talks about we are all actors in a soap opera at times, and it does certainly feel like that at times. It's a pretty unique business, the Broncos. It's listed. It's a big brand. It's a big business, but a lot of our core staff and core talent are aged between 20 and 30, and a lot of the bottom end of that. So they're still developing as young men, and as we know, young men at times can make mistakes. So for us, we obviously want to ensure, and football's our core priority. It's our core focus. We want to ensure that our players are given every opportunity to succeed, and obviously we know what flows on from that. But likewise, we try and address these matters holistically around how we can shape not just the athlete but the person as well. I remember Matt Shervington saying to me once that they give us all the tools to climb Everest, but we've got to come down it as well, and that's really important as a former Broncos captain. Because it's not just what you do throughout your career, but it's what it looks like post-career as well. And that's a really important focus for us as a club.
One of your great challenges last week was holding your nerve and having everyone in your organisation hold their nerve. Don't go willy-nilly talking to it left, right and centre. If you win the Titans match, then you have a bye. We're back in this. We're back in this thing. What goes into holding your nerve between player comments, coach comments, management comments and board comments?
I think there's a lot of, without doubt, there's a lot of outside noise around our organisation. What's important are the people inside it. So the people inside those four walls that, at the end of the day, have to have those conversations and work out the plan to get through the NRL season. It's not a sprint. It is a marathon. It is one of the longest, most intense competitions in the world. And as we know, in Australia, it generates a lot of interest. So, look, I think ultimately, in sport and in our competition, the wins and losses come and go. It's never as good as it seems and never as bad as it feels. So that's really, really important for us inside our organisation to hold on to and to remember, but also to try and remove the emotion and just step through a course. And we've had a bit of a challenging run over the last month, without doubt. But last weekend, we took a couple steps forward again. But it's important also not to get too excited. It's only halfway through the season. There's still another half of the season to go, and we're stepping through that origin period. So the guys are very, very focused on doing what they need to do to ensure that they're, I suppose, seeking or chasing that consistency that they're looking for.
And you need to be a bit excited, don't you? Cool.
Well, excitement's what drives you to represent the jersey every week and do that sort of thing. You mentioned about the people inside the club. I want to go down the path of recruitment and retention. It's obviously a big part of what you do. That being with the we're still yet to hear that Haas and Staggs, Cobbo's another one. Renault has been in the headlines over the last few weeks about re-signing. Where's the club at in all of that? Because if you do hold on to all these players, it goes without saying, some players do miss out. You can't hold and keep everyone. Where's the club at in relation to like a Tony Staggs and also a Selwyn Cobbo?
Yeah, it's a jigsaw puzzle, because it's ever evolving. It's a really unique landscape, the NRL player market, because it's and I often say this, it's 24/7 free agency. The deals can be done at any point. I remember a few years ago doing a deal on Christmas Eve. So right. Players and player agents, that's the market that we've I suppose become accustomed to, because that's the system that we've got in and amongst the game, and it is what it is. So look, from our end, there's no real time pressure to make any announcements. That's not to say those conversations aren't happening or haven't happened or deals haven't been finalised. We might have a few announcements that are coming up in the next few weeks, which I'm sure, as you said, Cos, it'll create some excitement amongst the fan base, which is great. Ooh. But we're very, we're trying to be very methodical and disciplined around our approach to it, because it's not straightforward. It's not an easy exercise, but it's a very important exercise that we get right.
You sound pretty comfortable too. So the managers are off your back. So it's pretty smooth at the moment.
Yeah, well, I had two of them to try and call me on the way in. So if those gentlemen are listening, I'll call you back shortly. But
up our sevens, come on, boys.
But look, as I said, it's a 24/7 free agency market. But look, I think often we do, and it's because it is an interesting one. We haven't made any announcements, and we've been fairly patient. The players have been fairly patient. The agents have been fairly patient. So. I know there's a committee that's been established by the NRL to look at the whole system, the contracting model, the salary cap rules and regs. So we've learnt a fair bit over the first 12 weeks or 13 weeks of the season, where I think perhaps those suppose that mentality around needing to get deals done 12, 13 months out from a player coming off contract.
Yeah.
You know, we've learned a bit about what actually happens in reality. So, you know, we as I said, we'll have some announcements coming out in the next few weeks, and we're looking forward to making those.
2021, I think, is when you first got your feet under the desk for the Broncos. It's been quite a ride.
Really?
Seabold into Kevin Walters, 4 years with Kevin Walters, grand final that was oh so close. Now into Madge Maguire. Why was he so important to get at the Broncos?
Yeah, look, as a club. We're chasing, I suppose, a higher level of professionalism, a higher level of push for the group and for our organisation. And certainly, Madge has had an enormous history of success, both in clubland and in the representative field. So when that position became available, he was a no-brainer. And look, the group, I think the group's made significant progress and real positive progress across the course of, the first half of the season. It certainly hasn't been in a straight line, and we had a good start. We've been a bit clunky the last month, as I mentioned before, and then got things back on track on the weekend. But there's a lot of good work going in and amongst the group and behind the scenes, and I'm confident they're certainly laying the foundation, the platform, putting all the systems in place that, because ultimately what we're chasing is sustainable success.
Yeah.
We don't want to dip into the finals and then dip out for a year or two and then dip back in. Like, it's all about how we can ensure consistency and sustainability, and that's what we're chasing.
Yeah, speaking with Dave Donaghy, the CEO of the Brisbane Broncos. Mate, you talked about Madge Maguire and the professionalism that he brings and the disciplinarian style of coaching that he also brings. We saw Selwyn Cobbo dropped out of the side last week. Wasn't a lot spoken in and around it or information given. Can you shed a little bit of light on why that was the case?
I think Selwyn's probably been, again, it's more a football matter, but he's probably been struggling a little bit for form the last month or so, or perhaps even a little bit longer. So, the Josiah Karapani, who's been playing, not a lot of people know a lot about Josiah, but
yeah.
We recruited him from South a couple of years ago, and he was probably a little bit immature when he came into the organisation. But it's been really clear around what he needed to do to put his hand up. And when you look at the Queensland Cup, which is it's a quality competition in itself. The last the first half of the season, he's been averaging over 200 metres a game, every week on the wing, scoring tries and is an out-and-out winger. So, the fact that Walsh had come back, and Walsh certainly, we've missed Reece, him not being there since he injured himself over at the Warriors. We've without doubt missed that. Selwyn's done did a good job, as did Jesse, trying to fill the gap. But Reece is a different player in itself, and for Josiah, he was knocking the door down, and in the end he smashed the door down with his performances in Queensland Cup and got that opportunity. And unfortunately, someone's got to miss out, and that's a difficult part of being a coach of those conversations. And so Selwyn's went back to Wynnum on the weekend. He had 80 minutes there, and
send him to Burleigh.
I did notice that jacket there. Driscoll would have been very happy with Burleigh down there. So
definitely.
Yeah.
Mate, I'm not happy with something, and I'm very wary of Melbourne. And it's unacceptable how much talent they've taken out of Queensland to me. Munster, Cronk, Slater, Grant, Smith. And now they're going to set up 2 academies. And then they're playing their young players in the New South Wales Cup, not even the Queensland Cup. Are we okay with this? Have we got a plan to counteract it? Or you like it that our talent is getting blossomed?
No, we would... I'm not sure what the answer is at the moment. It's challenging because look, from a Queensland club perspective, when you look at the great enemy in Sydney, and we're heading into Origin camp, so they are the great enemy. It's very hard to get a player out of Sydney because of the junior reps. So you can't recruit a player out of Sydney in the 16s, 18s, 20s, or 17s, 19s, 21s, whatever they've got these days. Because what they do, they ban them from playing in the junior reps. Mm-hmm. So if we wanted to sign the best kid out of Penrith, for example, and put him in our academy system, which is very good, if we did that, they would then get banned from playing in the junior reps, which would mean they'd have to relocate, that creates all kinds of challenges for a young man or young woman to have to do, from a well-being perspective and the like. So, they have without doubt a distinct advantage down there with that structure and that system. I think as a game, it's something that we do need to look at what that looks like, because we don't have parity across the board. We've got an affiliate model in Queensland. They've got a nuclear, a junior reps model. So that leaves all of us, not just the Broncos, but all the Queensland clubs susceptible from raids from down south. And that is challenging, but we have invested in our academy program significantly. We've got a number of we think we've got some great talent coming through. The challenge is always timing, because the great as great as they are, they're kids, and you can't win comps with kids in the NRL, and often that's what we're judged on. So look, that's the tricky part of that, and outside of building a wall heals, I don't have the answer, but certainly as a game, it is something that as a club we're aware of and pushing. But as a game, it's something the whole game needs to address.
Yeah, Icarus has come through. He said, "Morning, Dave. We'll keep Selwyn at Wynnum." Thank you very much. I don't think that'll be the case. However, Icarus, hey, Dave, make no reservations for the Broncos always striving for greatness. I mean, that's just been something that's been part of the DNA right since its inception. What would be a pass mark this year for the Broncos? Sitting currently 8th in the competition, you look at the roster at the start of the year and you go, that's a top 4 roster without doubt. Internally, from a business model point of view, what's a pass mark for the Broncos this season?
Well, I don't know if I'll talk pass marks, cause I'll talk goals, and I think it goes without doubt our goals to win the comp.
Yep.
So whether we get there or not, there's 17 teams across the whole game that are trying to do exactly the same thing, and in different ways. But that without doubt that's our goal, and we're working really hard to get there. We won a 7th premiership. We've been fortunate the last few years, or back into the teens for the NRLW team, which got their launch on Friday and they kick off next month. They've won 3 comps, but we haven't won a comp since 2006.
Come on,
that's something we want to change.
What the hell have you been doing, you blokes?
Well, we tried in 15, mate. And they tried in 23.
So we've been close, but we definitely we're absolutely striving, committed to get back there.
The next 4 games, the bye in the next 4 games might tell a nice story, and that top 4 and 5 might balance each other out and have some wins and losses. You've got Sharks at home, Warriors at home, Bulldogs away, Titans away. You have a good little 4 games there, you could be right up there.
Yeah. And the comp's so close. We're seeing it every week. Any as you said, 2 teams there, Sharks and Warriors, and Warriors put 40 on them at home. So it is so close that if you're off just marginally, any team could knock anyone
Playing
else
good
off.
teams won't hurt your team.
No, it's exactly what they need. Dave Donaghy, look, we really appreciate your time this morning. I know it's of the essence for yourself and running the club. They go to bye this weekend, be able to enjoy the break off what was a really good victory. Hopefully they can now springboard from that and grow a little bit of confidence for the back half of the season. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Cos. Thanks, Eels.
Cheers, mate.